No, the man says, his voice hoarse and touched with an accent I can't quite place. It's both familiar and unfamiliar, like an echo distorted by many speakers. He sits up, elbows on his knees, big brown eyes staring into mine. He's a beautiful, lithe creature bronzed from the summer sun. Long, black hair clings to his shoulders and chest. He brushes it to one side, and while I don't mean to, my eyes travel down to his hip, where a toothy impression drizzles blood onto the cast seal skin. Urea, I begin, almost forgetting to keep pressure on my own injury. Liam, he says, flashing a bright smile. His hand extends. No. No. Liam tilts his head quizzically, webbed fingers still outstretched. Shaking his hand, I try again. I mean, you're a selkie. His fingers engulf my own, but where mine are stiff and cold, his are warm. He squeezes, unbothered by the blood on mine, and leans back with an understanding sigh. Yes, a selkie, that is me. Those brown eyes are staring into mine again. Who are you? But I can't wrap my head around this. The obvious answer to his question doesn't come out of my mouth. Instead, I look from seal skin to man incredulously, and the words stumble off my lips. Aren't selkies supposed to be women? No. He barks, his chest quaking with laughter. At the same time he winces. Legends, they are always changing, but when they were made, many fishermen and sailors were at sea. Many more were looking for a woman than a man. I smile a little, take a moment to catch my breath and my thoughts. My mind races, wanting to ask so many questions, wanting to learn so many things. I reach for the edge of his seal skin. He frowns, tucks it back underneath his feet. Sorry, I mumble, but Liam only shrugs. Who are you? He asks again. He touches his waist, where the wound seems little more than a scratch. I have seen you before. I'm Noreen. You remember me? I say slowly, confused. At this point, I can feel my heartbeat behind my eyes. I remember this, Noreen, he says, and gestures to the drooping daisy. Very stupid, I thinks to myself, to be planting in sand where the tide runs. He takes the flower, gives it a sniff, and settles for twirling it idly. Not even any roots. It's a memorial, I say, snatching it back. With the daisy restored to its rightful place, I look back at Liam. Dusk dims his skin. His dark hair, drying slightly, blows back against his shoulders in the salt wind. I wipe my sandy fingers on my thigh. About 10 years ago, an extratropical storm blew through the air. Lots of damage up and around the entire coast from Portsmouth to Bar Harbor. A trawler crashed on the rocks around the cove. Do you remember that? Liam eases off the sealskin pelt, folding it in his arms. Not many crashes around here, he says. He takes a breath and points to the dark rocks where the sun has fully disappeared. This one crashed on the other side of the rocks. I nod. Even that tiny action sends my stomach churning. When I look at my calf, it's like the blood is rushing out faster, a constant stream that pulls around my leg for just a moment before the sand absorbs it. Did you see bodies? I ask. To this day, Chris was the only person on that trawler whom the Coast Guard hadn't found so much as a fingernail from. The rest of the crew had been found, some bloated, some just a collection of parts. For a long time I didn't want to think of my brother like that, like some pale bluish mass floating along in the sea, but when we buried his empty casket, I wished I could have had even a piece of him to put under the ground. We needed that peace, we needed that closure. Liam nods. Survivors. He thought a long time. Yes. One. My heart skipped a beat. There hadn't, not even as they pulled the bodies, been a sign of life from that trawler. No survivors, the police had told the media. What happened to him? Red and blue lights flood the horizon. A siren wails through the early night. Liam rises. Panic makes my heart flutter. It's okay. I gasp, lunging for his arm. I miss with a mouthful of sand, and he backs up several feet. What was the survivor's name? His big brown eyes are guilty now. He turns away. Christopher, he says, and then he's on his feet running through the shallows, scrambling over rock and sharp barnacles. He ducks down near the spray of the surf, and when the next wave crashes over the rocks, there's only a massive gray harbor seal. A fire truck rumbles into the desert lot and a cruiser pulls beside my car. Not far behind is an ambulance. Must be a slow night, I say as the cop reaches me first. He asks me what happened, but when I start to tell him, all I see are Liam's footprints, deep pockets of sand that the incoming tide bubbles and rolls through. In her 40s is a pragmatic warrior. 40 of years of bad decisions, of choosing herself and strangers over her children. It took Chris dying for her to try and be a parent, and even today, as we stand on the cold Maine coast in a heavy fog watching the tide roll out, she makes it seem like she's doing me a huge favor, coming out this way. She takes another drag of her thin cigarette, breathing smoke into the white gloom surrounding us. Nor, she says tiredly, turning the cigarette. We've been here 3 fucking days. This is his beach, I say resolutely, warming my hands in my sweatshirt. He'll be here. Once you meet him, you'll understand. Look, she snaps, bony fingers fumbling with the zipper on her hoodie. Her body is thin and frail, worn and used like the needle she spent years sticking into her veins. You didn't see a mermaid. Siren, I huff. Whatever. She takes another drag, bounces on her heels. I've been there. You took some powerful, bad shit to forget about Chris, and it made you wander off into the ocean. It's okay. You can admit it. I won't tell anyone unless you want me to. I didn't, I insist, looking down at my bandaged calf. The doctor said I'd been extraordinarily lucky, and that if I had been out there a little longer, I might have passed out and bled to death. The marine biologists and any practical thinkers who'd read the newspaper article on me, meanwhile, were a bit baffled as to why a shark would attack, and furthermore, what the hell I was doing wading into the frigid ocean waters on a fall night. Mom stays another 10 minutes, then trudges back to the Jeep to smoke and warm up. She thinks I'm nuts. I'm beginning to think I am nuts, that there's something wrong with me, that Liam wasn't real and none of this ever happened. Mom leaves for home the next morning with a warning that I won't have any money left for college if I waste it all on hotel rooms, if I stay in Maine chasing ghosts and mythical creatures. The absent days will add up on my report cards. My grades will suffer. I'll dig myself into a hole I can never climb out of. When I make it back to the hotel at night and go through my ritual process of cleaning the wound and eating a bag of chips from the vending machine, I do stop and think about my life. I sit in the dark beside my window, looking out at the starry sky, and I am scared about ruining everything. Whether or not Chris is alive, I am. I can't afford to look for him forever. What keeps me up at night, though, isn't that. It's the thought that he might be alive. He might be alive and never came to find me. Why? Why would he do something like that to me? The day Mom leaves, I try a new strategy. Before going to the beach, I stop in at a local convenience store, browsing the shelves until I've come away carrying a bag heavy with a cat's paradise, sardines, tuna, and frozen shrimp. I trudge out to the sharp, slippery rocks where I'd last seen Liam and scan the waterline for signs of a seal. There aren't any. There never are. But for a week I walk out and open a Kinder packet or shake some shrimp onto the rocks. The gulls will get them, greedy-eyed birds always circling from above. They seem to gather in heavier numbers, either because they expect my daily dinner delivery or the lack of beachgoers has finally cut into their food supply. But every day, beside the food, I leave a little Ziploc bag with a note inside for Liam. Sometimes the tide takes it, often I find it the next morning waterlogged and stuck in the pools left behind. Saturday night, when my wallet can't take any more, Saturday night is the night I decide to call it quits. The sun sinks below the horizon as a man and his dog play fetch on the shoreline. When a hazy gloom overtakes them, they load into their truck and I exit my Jeep. Wrapping the blanket from my hotel bed around my shoulders, I limp to the edge of the water with my last bag of frozen shrimp. I brought dinner. I shout and to myself grumble a few choice words. Reaching into the cold bag, the icy shrimp stick to my fingers until the heat from my hand warms them. One by one, I fling them into the sea. One by one, they thaw and drift out towards open, black water. Come and get it. You think that will work? An amused, hoarse voice calls from just behind my shoulder. Screaming, I whirl around and jam my fist straight into Liam's nose. He falls onto his elbows on the sand. Huge brown eyes blink into mine, and then the siren wipes the blood off his face and laughs.